my boss is into a show called Mindhunters. I'm a bit of a kiss ass, so that's where today's recommendation came from. And interestingly enough, I really like thrillers and I like crime shows, but for whatever reason, I don't watch a lot of them. This show is essentially about getting into the heads of serial killers. It takes place in the early days of criminal psychology and criminal profiling, the early 1970s, I would say. It follows these two guys, one young guy and one his older partner, who are investigating these serial killer cases. And the young guy is interested in interviewing these famous serial killers to get into their heads and really see the human psyche that leads up to what they do. And of course, they deal with very graphic cases and are trying to understand, where is this coming from? What's the sequence of events that leads up to someone doing this? It's a fascinating show. Even if if you like psychological thrillers, if you're interested in human psychology, this would be a cool show to check out. And of course, you get a lot of these cop show tropes. Oh, the one guy goes off the book, but the older partners and the rest of the police force don't agree. They like their tried and true methods. You could argue it's pretty relevant to today's climate with with issues of hostilities with the police force and the FBI, and how the system is so militaristic. You do see that in this show, particularly with how the police force doesn't want to learn. In the first episode, with the main character played by Jonathan Groff, Holden Ford, he's trying to really get people to understand and think a new way. But of course, nobody's interested in learning. They'd rather shoot first, ask questions later. They want to punish the criminals, not understand and prevent. So you do get this very interesting, human side versus the system versus act first and ask questions never. Very relevant, very timely show. But it's not really a procedural, because I like procedurals. I like seeing cases solved. I like seeing, who did it, why. But with a show like this, you're taking a lot longer to get to that point, which is a much more realistic approach. There's a great scene where the main character is interviewing a serial killer who's bigger than him, who's committed all these horrible atrocities and literally had sex with his mom's corpse. His older partner's telling him that he's just being manipulated. This guy spent so much time in the system, he just tells you what you want to hear. But you get a bit more of this, maybe there is some consistency here. Maybe we can get a genuine backstory out of this guy. So they're trying to get him to reveal what the truth is, even if it's just a pattern of ideas. How they talk to him. This is a guy, for a serial killer, this guy loves talking with the feds. He loves conversing with the authorities, friends with all the wardens, is surprisingly polite. Which is interesting. It does fit into the purpose of the show, which is trying to gain an understanding for what you don't understand, for the unknown, and for this particularly dark unknown, which is honestly very relevant, very fascinating. I'm curious where this is gonna go. I wonder if we're gonna know about these cases that are presented, or are these cases that they come up with, are they just part of a bigger picture and we don't really get the individual pieces, but we get more a general broader scope for what's going on. Plus, it's a very interesting history. The way it's filmed, I keep forgetting that it's supposed to take place in the 70s just by the way it's shot, by the way they're dressed. But then some of the attitudes they have, cannot talk ever. Oh, they reference the hippie flower power era. They'll still call someone a hippie. It's still very much a white guy's world. So you get this, I don't know how to quite describe it, but you get this very tribe-like mentality, at least with the students who are set in their ways, who've been working through the 50s and 60s and are not open to trying a new way. Just more out of a fear for their own safety, out of an unwillingness to understand, and out of a belief that all these criminals are just born bad, that they're just bad people, there's just crazy in the world, people can flip for no reason, which from an outsider's perspective you can see that as true. It seems like no reason, but then you gotta really do work as the audience member. You gotta work to understand, okay, what is this going to? What's the bigger picture? So I'm curious to see if there's an overarching story per season, or if the whole series is about what happened, how are these people produced in our world. If you're interested in that, it's worth a shot. I'm curious to know what other people think, because it's funny, because for me, I'm more used to, when I think thrill, I usually think Hitchcock, I think the fantastical, but this feels more historical. I'm curious to see where it goes. I don't feel completely immersed in the world of the 70s, but I do believe, but except for the parts where you get a bit of that history, that historical profiling, they are a bit more they are a bit more free with their racial slurs, as the civil rights movement in this time period had only happened a couple years ago. So you get that, and of course it's not going to be the most progressive thing in the world, but I do feel it does reflect the world that it is trying to portray. Of course, I've never been through the 70s, so curiouser and curiouser. I'm interested to know what other people have to say about this. If you guys watch this show, like I said, I don't usually watch a lot of thrillers, but I like them. This feels a bit more of a realistic type of thriller, but one that has enough good ideas and a history to really keep your brain going and to really get you asking questions and even change the way you think. Those are the thoughts for tonight, so